Soybean Management Field Days going on around Nebraska. This stop, it is in Chapman, is where we have caught up with Loren Giesler, Extension Plant Pathologist with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And Loren, always at these events talking about diseases, current issues that farmers are having. What are you talking about this year?
Well, it's kind of depend a little bit on location, Ken, but we're hitting on white mold, here today, and in the northern sites where people are having more problems with that again this year. And then the other ones we're hitting on are stem and root rots, because we're in stem and root rot season again. So these hit at that same time where SDS starts showing up, brown stem rot, and then we're also promoting our cyst nematode sampling program that's funded through the checkoff.
Even though things look really good, you can't forget about the SD. I'll get that right. SDS, yes.
Yeah, well, SDS is one that'll be hitting right now, and when they're seeing that, a lot of our growers are starting to deal with that. It's still not a major problem in the state, but there's more and more of it all the time, and some guys are having significant problems with it.
Has white mold been an issue more this year because in some of the areas where we've had really almost ideal conditions, if you will?
Well, it's interesting. I put out an alert in Crop Watch that I thought there would be less of it because it was in the 90s during flowering, but it turned out I was pretty wrong on that. So to the northern states, and the reason for that is usually they talk about white mold not being as much of a problem when it's over 85 degrees, but a lot of those came out of recommendations around the Great Lakes states where they don't get the real cold nights like we get here. So when we had those 90s and we got down in the 60s at night, and we got extensive dew periods, and we're in the optimum time for white mold, so temperature-wise. So that's why I think some of our growers again this year had problems. But overall, not quite as much as last year, but some of those guys, particularly to the north, are having problems with it.
Well, has there been additional challenges because we've gone through this whole growing season? Every week, USDA says we've got almost near ideal conditions and really almost ideal crop, really.
Well, I think it is pretty good. I think those really high temperatures, though, when it comes to beans, they don't really like that 100-degree day thing. So, even in development early on, they were just kind of sitting there for a while when we had those real hot days and put back pod set a little bit. But, otherwise, it is pretty good. If we keep getting, this occasional rains, go through August, don't have super high temperatures, I think we're in good shape.
So with those high temperatures, I guess we didn't get that kind of flash drought in a sense, but we did have some high temperatures. Does that bode for some concern looking post-harvest, looking into even the next year?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, and from a pathology standpoint, really that stress in August. If we get some stress, that really leads to more problems, and that's when you'll pick up your SDS, your brown stem rot, your charcoal rot. The other thing is if you get any of that stress there, that's what will have more impact from cyst nematode. So for the last several years now, though, we've had really good rains in August, and if we keep that up, that impact's going to be a lot less. So, but again, I'm just, consistently encouraging farmers and guys that are managing those grounds to make sure that they're getting their problems identified right so they can use the right varieties and such in the future. Really, checking in and seeing what their cyst nematode populations are doing. Even if they know they have it, maybe 5-6 years later, giving it a check and just seeing, because we are seeing breakdown, to some of those resistant source, that main one that's out there, that some of our fields we do have populations can reproduce on.
So even though things look good, go beyond just driving by, get out there and beyond maybe those first 6 rows and really take a good look.
Always good to take a good look and see what's going on. The other disease we're talking about a little bit is frog eye. So frog eye is not a major disease. A lot of guys aren't spraying for it, but it's just starting to build. So I see that as one. In the next few years, we're going to have more and more fields affected by frog eye.
Talk about that, because we haven't really talked about that very much over the last few years.
Yeah, so frog eye is a disease. It's a foliar disease, a residue-borne, just like brown spot that they see in the field. But it's becoming more common. So now we've got fields all the way from South Dakota border to the Kansas border that spotted in different areas, not across the whole geography, but they're experiencing more frog eye. So that's one that will typically show up in that later stage, after it flowering, a little after pod set. Start seeing dark spots in the leaves with a dark purple margin around them. And those will typically be again in those leaves that they're developing later. As the leaf matures, it's not as it's not sensitive to it, or it can't be infected after that leaf's fully mature. So those upper leaves are where you tend to look for it. And then again, once they have it, it will always show up. So if they get enough of it, that's where you want to look at varieties that are more tolerant.
All right, Loren, well, thanks for the update. I know you've got to go to your presentation, so thanks. Always good to see you.
All right, thank you. You too, Ken.
Loren Giesler, plant pathologist, University of Nebraska-Lincoln Extension, has joined us from near Chapman, Nebraska. I'm Ken Rogers.